Cool. We have yeah, I guess a decent chunk of people to begin the call. Thanks everyone for joining in. Here with me from the StakeWise team is also Dima, who will help me in, I guess, going over some of the topics for today.
Hey everyone.
In terms of what I wanted to talk about briefly is just a recap of what we did in the past 2 weeks, including the latest thinking on redemptions, like you mentioned, Derek, and then also to talk about the rotation of the withdrawal credentials for the pool, because this vote has now been completed like 7 minutes ago, and we will be proceeding with the actual rotation so that we get rid of the Horcrux once and for all. And then finally, if we have time, I guess we can talk about open-ended questions related to StakeWise and V3, whatever you guys have in your mind. If we can sort of answer any questions, we will stick around for that. And yeah, like the last time, I think it's just going to be kind of like a free-flowing update, more like a conference call thing rather than a presentation, because yeah, it's just mostly an informal update. So coming to StakeWise V3 sort of development updates, the past 2 weeks have been pretty busy for everyone involved. I guess the sort of biggest milestone that we cleared in the past 2 weeks is the completion of the first audit. So we have received the first report, like the audit report following the first look at the code on Friday, I think. And over the weekend, we managed to go over it and essentially introduce the changes that were required. There were not too many, so we managed to do this over the weekend. And so the Halborn team are now looking over the updated contracts. Just a quick second, there's a delivery on my end. 1 second. Yeah, apologies for that. So that was nice. And so we have we're now proceeding with just the review of what has been changed. And after that, I think with the vaults part at least, we will have had the first audit, completed in its entirety. Another thing that we managed to complete is scoring model, at least partially. So I think we have a very strong prototype that incorporates validator performance tracking and score formation based off of it. We now are in a position to start testing it. There are obviously components that we will need to add to the scoring model beyond that, but effectively, the validator performance piece was always sort of the biggest hurdle, or rather, let's say the most challenging component. And so that, I think, we have a very, very strong start on that front. The UI part was actually for OSC specifically, was actually a sort of big headache of mine for a while, because of, let's say, our goal to make relatively complex logic simple in the app's interface. And so actually, I think we managed to dumb it down into a very, very usable interface where you see just enough to make sure that you're not sort of bombarded with different data, but also you see just enough to always keep track of how healthy your position, your OSEF position is, and essentially what does this OSEF position represent for you. So the people who will be participating in the testnet will see it. Essentially, the biggest change is that the OSEF positions now are minted against each vault separately, rather than, let's say, handling one position across different vaults as like one OSEF borrow across different collateral types. You have an OSEF position per vault. So it becomes way simpler to monitor, just in terms of healthiness. Maybe not in terms of, let's say, the number of steps that you need to make in order to like close down your position, for example, or open it up. But at least comparing to, let's say, a typical lending protocol, we don't anticipate as much volatility between your stake and your OSEF. So there actually is no need to actively manage your position, and therefore minting OSEF from each individual vault makes sense. It also means that we have managed to simplify and make liquidations and redemptions, and hopefully, actually liquidations and redemptions simpler, and to an extent, like more profitable for the protocol, where we might not need to rely on external participants to produce liquidations for us, and the liquidation premium that can be extracted from liquidations can actually go to the DAO treasury instead of going to the like wider participant group. And this happens because when you mint OSEF from like on the vault level, there's a bunch of stuff underneath that allows one to not take any VLT token risk when executing a liquidation, and doesn't require one to even commit capital to produce a liquidation. And so because of it, a DAO is able to participate in performing a liquidation without taking on major risk. And so actually this kind of contributes to our discussion around tokenomics and, what is StakeWise doing to earn more based on its, new product, because we perhaps uniquely could be able to find another revenue stream for us. Obviously, we wouldn't want to. Nobody wants to liquidate users, but in case liquidation is required, at least it would be net positive for the DAO. Similar thing with redemptions, actually. So I think the last time we spoke about redemptions, we discussed our, main idea being redemptions based on a certain LTV threshold. And I think this time around, the thinking has changed somewhat. The reason again is the change in the underlying mechanics for how OSEF is minted. So actually, a part of what we were now thinking has been inspired by what you wrote, Derek. I think it was you, where redemptions could use spare ETH in different vaults, where, let's say, execution layer rewards or just new deposits are flowing but have not been staked per se yet, can be used for redemptions as this sort of first layer of ETH that is available for redemptions. And then if this is not enough, then what we're thinking is essentially redeeming ETH from validators, kind of like on a per vault basis, but also by applying certain limits to how much is withdrawn per every vault. And effectively, it would look like this. If we see that there is a discount on the token in the market, we would try and estimate how much OSEF it would take to remove a certain supply from the market so that the peg would be restored. And then we unstake a number of validators that would support this kind of return to peg. Since the ETH that is exiting the validators is still earning rewards, there's no effect on anyone whatsoever. And then once the ETH is actually withdrawn, we can do a flash transaction where OSETH, or rather ETH, that has been redeemed from the different vaults is used to purchase the necessary amount of OSETH and burn it. Also with the corresponding reduction in OSETH position of people in those vaults. So nobody loses anything in terms of yield or in terms of capital. The protocol can actually also realize a gain based on the closing of the discount. And again, if this is not performed by the protocol, this can also be performed by other people, essentially redeeming OSETH for the underlying spare ETH somewhere in the vaults. Or, we can meet the withdrawal request based on based on the amount of OSETH that must be withdrawn. So yeah, overall, we think it's a neater system. It's a departure from the original thinking, but it seems to be more profitable, more efficient, and actually also simpler. So there's that. I'll stop here in case you have any questions. Maybe I haven't touched on different things like clearly enough. So if you want them clarified, let's do it now.
Couple of questions. So just to make sure that I'm thinking about this one properly. So first, let's say that I want to withdraw 50 Ether, right? So first it's going to look through and see, okay, what spare Ether exists either through rewards or through deposits that haven't been bonded to a validator, or a vault that has, 40 Ether and only 32 of it is actually bonded. It's got 8 to pull from. So basically grab all the unutilized Ether first, which definitely seems more efficient. But then for the remaining amount, so let's say that gets me down to 30, but I still have a remaining 30 that I want to withdraw. Is that going to exit a single validator, or is it going to exit multiple validators and pull proportionately from different vaults?
Yeah, Dima, if you want to take this one, you can. If you want to explain this, otherwise I can.
Probably like the only part I didn't fully understand was whether that was like OSETH redemption, or was it redeeming the vault tokens, like the ones you receive.
Yeah. So
stake.
let's say that I've got 30 Ether that I want to redeem, or I have OSETH, and we'll just say the equivalent value would be 30 Ether, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go get Ether. Would I go from OSETH to ETH by forcing a single vault to exit a validator and thus create 32 ETH worth that can be pulled?
Yeah, I think like ideally we want to leave as like less Ether just sitting in the vault, because all the Ether that is not staked is affecting APR of the vault. So like the more we can utilize from every validator we exit, the better it will be. So in that case, I think it's better to have just one validator withdrawn from, let's say, from the vaults, from the largest, either it could be like largest vault, or it could be the one with like lowest APR, and then you can redeem from it. But actually,
Okay,
like also the question
that was going to be my
whether
next question is how do we determine who gets exited?
Yeah. I think like the first thing is to first like get rid of Ether, or actually like start with vaults with like lower APR, let's say due to the fact that they have a lot of idling Ether, and increase their APR by just like withdrawing OSETH from there. But of course, we also have to make sure we kind of don't withdraw that from the vaults that don't have like many validators, and we just, let's say, stop all the validators and like redeem OSETH from there. So there should be maybe some sort of percentage cap that you can stop, like validators that you can exit. So this one is like actually we're still looking into how the best way to do that. But one goal we want to achieve here is to improve APR for the vaults that have it like lower than the average due to, let's say, large amount of ETH there sitting idling, and also make sure we don't. Let's say if we need to redeem 1 Ether, probably we won't kind of stop validators for that, because it does make sense to like withdraw 32 Ether, take 1 Ether from there, and leave like the rest sitting there, because that could also affect APR here. Yeah, Derek, does it answer the question?
Yep, I'm tracking.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely curious on where we get to with determining who gets exited. Because I do foresee a game in which if I were to deposit 32 Ether, or we'll say more than 32 Ether, I then go mint OS ETH, immediately try to redeem it for Ether as an attempt to pump my own vault, and it then causing others to exit. It's a really tough problem. I've thought about it a lot more than I would like to admit. But ultimately, I don't know if we can avoid that game, but if we can, I feel like that would be a good thing. Otherwise, it starts to become just a leverage staking scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem to solve for us. One thing we were also thinking whether redemptions can be, let's say, can be handled by DAO as well, because let's say no, it's not the redemptions, because like if you just buy OSIF from the market, the way for you to unstake is just to sell it after some time. That's one thing. But let's say redeeming, right? Someone with OSIF coming to the vault and redeeming from there. Whether we wanted to enable that, that's the question. Only maybe for tax stability, probably. When, let's say, OSIF is trading below, then you can redeem, like buy it from the market and then redeem it from some vault for 1-to-1 with Ether. And maybe that part can be done by DAO as well. In that case, because there's a way we can do that without requiring you to have like extra Ether to buy OSIF from the market and then redeeming it through the vault.
Yeah, well, hopefully this gives more clarity. But obviously, we would want to release the full updated scope once everything is finalized, also along with the documentation. Yeah, things we're discussing here are really, let's put it this way, like corner cases, but nevertheless very important for everyone from stakers to node operators and vault operators. So yeah, thanks for bringing those up, Derek. Certainly very valid, and I guess we're just keen to show it off so that no more questions remain. Yeah, so once again, the scoring model mechanics, just the foundational mechanics have been built. The OSIF UI has been completed, and also some OSIF functionality revamped, as we just discussed. There were also several, let's say, collectively major but individually minor updates to the various parts of the UX flow when creating vaults, for example, and then some refactoring and additions to the UI and backend infrastructure. when it comes to vaults and when it comes to oracles and so forth, which I will not go into detail about, but yeah, we I think slowly but surely are like being very satisfied with what we see, at least on the current testnet, and all of this is going to be present on the public testnet where you guys will also be able to play with it and let us know your thoughts. In terms of in terms of V3 updates, then this is mostly it on the development side. I think to say a few words about the commercial side, we continue pretty active reach out to all the different parties that could be using vaults and OSCEIF, and become major partners for StakeWise. We, as it typically is done, we sort of do this in kind of private. The reason I'm mentioning this is to say that we have, let's say, decent activity on the testnet, and the decent activity off the testnet, where we receive feedback on what StakeWise V3 does for various use cases. And the team's take on this is that we're very satisfied with, let's say, the feedback, but obviously are very eager to have all of the leads that we have use the public testnet. So just to underline once again that this remains a priority and focus of ours, and we're very sort of full speed ahead with that. Now moving on, I guess, to the rotation of withdrawal credentials, just a brief update there. So last week we obviously published the snapshot vote about changing the withdrawal credentials for just a little over 600 StakeWise pool validators, so just a little over 18,000 ETH staked in those. And the idea is that we want to get rid of the Horcrux to enable redemptions down the line when StakeWise V3 goes live, and also to remove the sort of reliance on the Horcrux itself, and have everything handled solely by smart contracts. This vote has now been finished. We are well over the quorum. Everyone's voted in favor of approving the payloads that we have created. And now we will proceed with the Horcrux holders sort of key rotation ceremony, withdrawal credentials rotation ceremony that will keep everyone posted about. I think depending on how quickly we as a group can act, you can expect updates from us before the end of the week. We want to get this over and done with, so yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the updates on this. What else? I think we have had several discussions on the StakeWise Discord as well as on the StakeWise forum about tokenomics. I think the two major takeaways from what different people have been saying is that, one, SWISE certainly needs some sort of utility within the StakeWise protocol, with which I personally solely agree. And second is that it seems that the biggest concern for most folks is the sort of absence of a clear, let's say, path to adding this sort of utility. I think, without taking any stand on this as a team, my personal take would be that tokenomics, successful tokenomics, is very important, but tokenomics don't make the protocol, at least in the initial stages, and it's the opposite. The protocol makes the tokenomics in the sense that if a protocol is successful, it is likely that tokenomics will be successful. You cannot have one without the other, but you can have a bad protocol and good tokenomics that eventually don't work. So we're currently focused on shipping the protocol as the first priority. So the team's focus lies solely on this, but I also think that once we have the sort of full scope of StakeWise V3 finalized and released, along with documentation and along with the public testnet, we're going to start more active discussions and thinking around the tokenomics. And obviously this will all help happen in the public eye. Whatever thinking and proposals we have, we will lay them out on the forum, and we will be able to weigh in on the merits of it collectively. I think in terms of updates and in terms of the sort of formal agenda for the call, at least what I had in mind, there's nothing else to add here. So if you guys have anything on your mind, any more questions about V3, we can use the remaining time to discuss those, or just chat about anything else. So yeah, let's maybe pause and see if there are any questions related to the DAO, the tokenomics, or V3.
Yeah, Kale. Regarding the audits, so how do they work? Is it just like, are you testing for like the law of large numbers, where you say the more audits you do, the more you feel comfortable with the code, or is it you have different companies auditing different aspects of V3, say like maybe the economic theory and then the security and etc.?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, and it's applicable to any audit really. I think the way that we approach it is yeah, kind of like the law of large numbers, if you want to call it that. Essentially, the more eyes you can get on your code, the better, and the more people try to break your code, the better. So what we aim to do is work with the teams that are the most proficient, or at least have a reputation for being the most proficient in the space, for testing the sort of technical and economic assumptions that are baked into your code, and trying to find flaws in them. So in our case, the first company that we chose for that is Halborn, whom we have been recommended to them by different other protocols in the space, as well as their former and current colleagues. And yeah, so far it's been sort of a good relationship, and also some some good findings, I guess. We obviously want to have more than just one audit, so we're currently waiting essentially for a few more offers to come in for the second round of audits, so that we could choose and proceed with those. And by that time, they all receive functionality, and anything else is going to be completed. So this one is going to be kind of like the final audit. And I think depending on the success of StakeWise V3, and also based on the, I guess, demand from the individuals and companies that we work with, we might have another audit once we release, just I guess for just insurance sake or something. I would say that Immunify, like an Immunify bounty is certainly worth having. We have an Immunify bounty for the existing version of the protocol. I think it's a no-brainer to have that once we release V3 as well. But yeah, most certainly we won't release the code unless we are, certain of how it works and how secure it is, and also the auditors get the auditor's opinion and our closest partner's opinion. Frankly, some of them possess due diligence capabilities of their own, so they can take a look at our code and offer their opinion as well. So far, it's been pretty positive. But yeah, that's the sort of approach to audits. The more the merrier, always. But there's somewhere where you need to draw the line. We draw the line at two major security firms at this time, and let's see what happens after that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say hi, guys. Love what you're doing, as always.
Hey, man. Good to have you with us. Thanks for stopping by.
Of course.
Yeah, we have two guys here from the Luxo team or Luxoverse team. Sorry if I'm not being specific enough.
It's kind of the same. That's a fair. I mean, we're not Luxo, but I think we're gonna be the only pool on Luxo, as far as I know. So we're trying to monopolize it.
Yeah, well, staking is definitely a game of numbers, and while you still have a good shot at creating a strong business, if you're not the first to market, it certainly helps to be the first. So I think you guys are right to try and stand this up as quickly as possible after Luxo's release.
Yeah, since you bring that up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was gonna ask about Luxo next.
Oh, awesome. So Jordy's handling all the technical stuff, and I'm handling the marketing for the website right now. And since we're a part of this early testing phase, I'm trying to figure out the right wording. And right now we're sort of being a little bit vague about our relationship with StakeWise. We obviously want to make it clear that we're powered by StakeWise, but is it appropriate for us to call ourselves a partner of StakeWise or some other word? How would you phrase that?
Yeah. So maybe basically a quick backstory for the remaining participants in the call. So first, to start with Luxo, this is a new chain that has been launched by one of the Ethereum's, I guess, biggest contributors. That has been in development for a while now, but yeah, you guys can probably talk more about that. But one thing that I am going to say is that it's very just architecturally similar to ETH. And so what some of the Luxo community members that are in certain cases also hardcore StakeWise users have been discussing with us is the potential for StakeWise deployment on Luxo. And since the mechanics are similar or very similar, it doesn't really take a lot of technical lift to adapt our ETH architecture for Luxo. And similarly to how it worked with GNO, it's possible to create a sort of new product for the StakeWise DAO without putting a lot of burden on the dev team and anybody else. And in this case, actually, it would be fair to say that you guys on the Luxo side would be willing to essentially run with it, as long as there is some sort of agreement with the StakeWise DAO for how this product is used and marketed, and what the sort of relationship is there that would be known to everyone publicly. And yeah, this is kind of the backstory for your question.
Yeah, because I've been bugging you guys for 2 years now about Luxo, right? And so has Vlad. So, and
Yeah.
and all the same things you just said. The architecture is virtually identical to Ethereum except for the new standards.
Yeah. So precisely. And with regards to that, what we have discussed between us is basically that whatever StakeWise V3, whenever StakeWise V3, is sort of deployment ready, at least when it comes to the public testnet. This is going to be, the time for us to see whether anything can be quickly ported to other chains as well. And yeah, I think from the perspective of just laying the foundation, this at least is how I would think about it. Basically, let us deploy, let us focus on shipping this for ETH, deploy it on testnet, and then see what's the best way to also port it on Luxo. And then if we find that it works without any major hassle, I think we should create some sort of a formal DAO discussion into what the relationship is, what are the sort of rules of this relationship, and so forth. So I think to answer your question specifically, we should probably have this discussion out in the open, rather than, let's say, just between the dev team and you guys.
Okay, that's interesting. So, out in the open, so that who can partake in that? The Luxo community, or developers on Ethereum that might want to jump onto the Luxo bandwagon?
I think first of all, this would be beneficial for the StakeWise community just to be in the loop with about everything that's happening, related to StakeWise. So that would be, I guess, my first intention. Second intention is that, exactly like you said, it is possible, like Vlad, like yourself, and others, some of the members of the StakeWise community can look to Luxo as this new exciting chain where they can not only get the token but also stake it in the architecture that they're already very familiar with. And yeah, I think it's also a bit of a marketing push for you guys. And then finally, yeah, since ultimately whether to deploy or not is something of a community decision, it makes sense to essentially rally the community behind this. I don't think that there should be many major hurdles for that. Just from the utility perspective, it's fairly simple to deploy in Luxo, it seems. It could open up new revenue streams for StakeWise. It could support another network, which is super important for our mission as well. And yeah, I don't see why this wouldn't gather support, but just so that everyone could be in the loop, would probably want to have this discussed out in the open.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm trying to figure out, so because the Ethereum community is slowly becoming aware of Luxo, but it's a strange name and it's a strange chain, so it hasn't, and it's taken a long time to develop because there's a lot of interesting new standards. But what we bring, obviously, is we've built a really good reputation in the Luxo community. So we could bring that from a marketing standpoint. We could bring, and I've told you guys before, we know all the whales, so we could bring a ton of business, a ton of stakers. So I guess what I'm picking up in what you're saying right now is whether the StakeWise community, how they want to approach this. I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying instead of a V3 vault, are you talking about doing a whole new, just supporting it in the way that you did Gnosis, or what am I getting wrong here?
I'm not sure whether there's anything that you're getting wrong here. I think personally, I would like to figure out the best way for StakeWise to participate in the Luxo community and also on the Luxo chain, and also do it in a way that kind of meets your guys' needs, because you want to be, the pool that is powered by StakeWise V3, but also since, we don't know, I personally don't know, or maybe I'm not, up to date on all the latest thoughts for how you want to do it. It's worth just laying out all the info in one place for everyone to see and discussing from there. And please don't take this as basically, a reluctance to ship or a reluctance to support, or like hiding behind some sort of a process to stall the development of this effort. It's mostly just to keep everyone in the loop and let everyone weigh in about the sort of way that StakeWise could get involved, since ultimately, yes, we do have a dev team that is shipping a product and is coming up with, new solutions and kind of taking the stewardship of the protocol. But at the same time, we're sort of actively trying to move away from that, and having this sort of decision, discussed and made in public would help us in that. So that's why I'm sort of advocating for this open discussion approach. And again, to me personally, the only thing that is relatively uncertain is the timeline. I'm fairly certain that one way or another, StakeWise community would find a way and a will to support Luxo and Luxoverse.
Yeah, and I'm also sensing that you guys want more. You guys would like to make less of these decisions on your own, and you'd like the StakeWise community to be more involved in these decisions. That's kind of what I'm hearing. That which is totally understandable.
Yeah, totally. I think this is actually like one of the reasons why, let's say for StakeWise V3, we have preferred to go with the modular architecture that, could be picked up by anyone to build whatever they want on their own without, anyone's involvement. Having a protocol that is kind of this middleware or this kind of tool for helping others achieve their goals is way better fitting for a DAO structure than having just an app that does things where you merely control certain parameters. So yeah, it definitely is our intention to have more and more community involvement in decisions and stewardship of the protocol, so that the StakeWise team doesn't influence the future direction of the protocol.
Yeah, well, that's what makes you guys the best. You're very DAO centric and very community centric. That's what I love about you guys.
Thank you. Well, we try to be. It how to put this? It's not always, doesn't always work out this way. We still need to put in, I guess, more effort to achieve certain things collectively. So we're still kind of steering the protocol in that sense, but it doesn't need to remain this way. And especially with V3, there's more scope to move away from this sort of structure. So yeah, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad that we still have you with us.
Well, and thanks for answering that. And it probably bored the devs in the chat, but important for community engagement is getting the message right. So, as you guys know.
For sure. And yeah, hopefully it didn't bore anyone out, because yeah, I personally am pretty excited about Luxo, and I think for StakeWise to have some sort of support for Luxo is going to be value additive, not only just in terms of community, but also in terms of just the monetary value. So yeah, we definitely need to have these conversations.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question, Selby, here in the chat. You're seeing it. If you want to answer that. Okay, I guess I can answer that. Yeah, so
Oh, sorry. What was the question? I was I got distracted for a second. You said there's a question?
yeah, there's a question here in the chat about a Luxo V3 ETH vault. Is it a leg into the Luxo chain?
Is it a what to the Luxo chain?
A leg into the Luxo chain.
Like LAG?
Yeah, LEG. Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but it's somebody's asking what is the Luxo network? So it's an EVM right now, but it's going to be an L1 here in about 3 weeks. It'll be an independent L1.
I think he's saying Serge is saying it allows you to participate. I think if I have a V3 Luxo vote, I'm technically participating in the Luxo chain.
The question is whether essentially this would be an ETH vault that is deployed in StakeWise V3 for the Luxo chain, or is this going to be essentially a separate deployment of StakeWise V3 on the Luxo chain, where everything is going to be denominated in Luxo?
That's a really good question that you guys, I think that kind of is what we were talking about, right? Like what direction is StakeWise ultimately going to go? It sounds like, and what we're building, is in anticipation of V3. We're under the assumption that we're building for the eventual V3 vault for Luxo, but it sounds like, Kirill, if you're excited about Luxo, maybe there's potential for a more concrete partnership between the Luxoverse or Stakingverse, Luxoverse, and StakeWise. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that question, Kirill?
Yeah, like we just discussed. I think I have only one side of this question figured out, which is mostly basically community/commercial side of it. There's also the technical side. So I think as long as we are really flexible on the technical side, from the sort of community/commercial side, it makes sense to support Luxo as essentially a standalone deployment. But yeah, if there are any other ways in which we can support, we should also explore those. Okay, well, a lot about Luxo, but let's not lose track of just the first goals in sight. So this is public testnet. I'm really hoping that by the time we have another call in 2 weeks, we will have either released the public testnet or have approached the point at which we are like 99% ready to release it. I think from the Thailand perspective, we can definitely pull this off, and there's several things in the works, but since most of them are kind of nearing completion or are already in testing stage, we can do this, I think. This is not a promise, but more like a statement of intention. So yeah, I think unless we have anything else, any specific questions to discuss related to the DAO, the V3 development, or anything else at this time, we can.
Are you telling me that I'm too late? I just joined.
Sasha, I'm afraid you are, my friend.
Oh,
I'm
God.
sorry to say this, but yeah, I'm very happy to hear your voice. I hope everything is well with you.
Yeah, everything is fine, thanks. But I see you're recording this, so no worries.
Yes. I took another step in my Discord management development and learned how to use Craig. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect.
all good. Yeah, well, like you pointed out, the recording will be available. I'm again very thankful for everyone who found time to listen in, ask questions, listen to answers, and just participate in the discussion. We will release another update in 2 weeks. And for now, stay tuned for the update on the credential rotation news. And yeah, for the other updates about V3 that we release in the meantime. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.